Stop me if you have ever heard this one before. It is time for the Brooklyn Nets to blow it up. Sixer Nation, if there was ever one off season for this team to go out and bring the guy home that they traded away after drafting and broke everybody's hearts with, it is this off season, and I am going to tell you exactly why. Also, we will react to a proposed trade put up on Bleacher Report and a whole bunch more. But Sixer Nation, I have a question. Do you think Mikal Bridges is the missing piece? Do you think that they should go out and spend a lot of assets to bring Bridges back to Philadelphia if possible? Give me your thoughts down below in the comments section. And before we get into all of mine, a shout out to our great sponsor of today's show, and that is BetUS, the best out there doing it. Obviously, the Sixers are now out of the playoffs, but that doesn't mean you can't go make some moolah with some of these other games going on. A lot of good series right now. BetUS is the best out there doing it with 24/7 service and 24-hour payouts. And by using my link down in the description, you can get a 125% deposit match bonus on your first 3 deposits. And I'm looking at these games going on tonight. A lot of uncertainty. I mean, a lot of upsets right now. Obviously, Jokic won his 3rd MVP, but the Nuggets might go down 3-0 because the Timberwolves are red hot, and I think they are. I'm going to take the Timberwolves tonight, -3.5. Easy as that. Couple clicks, and boom, just like that, you are in on BetUS. Once again, the best out there doing it, and you can get a 125% deposit match bonus just by using my link down in the description. They have you covered. All sports, U.S. international. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want, they got it. Check them out. Shout out to BetUS. All right, let's talk about Mikal Bridges because, it still delivers that deep pain in Sixer Nation. It still hurts, man. It stinks. And now everybody's starting to talk about Mikal Bridges, and it has gone a bit under the radar, but Bridges has a big decision to make this offseason, right? Nobody's thinking about the Nets. Nobody cares about them because they stink. I mean, the Nets have had yet another disastrous season, and obviously, people are going to be like, well, why are Sixer fans talking about the Nets, and how do they have room to talk? Look, man, the Nets have spent a lot of draft picks, a lot of capital to get big-time players, and none of it has worked out. And shout out to Sharif Keaton over on Yahoo Sports, who wrote an article about this situation, and it says one of the lesser talked about aspects is that Mikal Bridges is eligible for an extension if he and Brooklyn decide to come to terms on an extension this offseason. Bridges is 27, will be entering the second to last year of the 4-year, $90 million extension that he signed with the Phoenix Suns during the 21-22 season. What will be interesting is what kind of money Bridges will be looking for, given that he made 21.7 this past year and has been one of the better 3-and-D wings in the NBA over the past few years. And then they talk about Bridges, potentially trying to make between 25 and 30 per year. I think that's fair for Bridges. But look, if they want to go for a max contract, and, I'm not Mikal Bridges. I don't know him, so I can't answer personally, but I don't think he wants to stay in Brooklyn. I don't think anybody wants to. If they want to have longevity in their career and they want to succeed and try to win a championship, I don't understand why he would want to stay in Brooklyn other than purely financial. But there will be teams out there who are willing to pay Mikal Bridges. And when it comes down to it, man, the Philadelphia 76ers, of course, will be in every trade rumor this offseason given their cap space. A lot of people have said, well, how can the Sixers afford to bring anybody in? How can they make a trade when they don't have any players on a roster other than Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid and Paul Reed? Well, the answer is that they have so much cap space that they have the flexibility to bring in contracts. And, obviously they'd have to give up draft picks or whatever else it takes, but they can afford to bring these guys in based on their cap space right now, upwards of 60 mil. And, they wouldn't have to shed out salary. But when it comes to Mikal Bridges, I always say, let's look at the contract. As it mentioned, 23.3 this upcoming year, which is probably being underpaid for Mikal Bridges. And then 24.9 mil in the last year, which will be next season. And look, he's probably going to want to get an extension done this offseason. Matter of fact, the Nets have a big decision to make, right? Do they want to pay Mikal Bridges, or do they want to trade him, try to get as much draft capital as they can and say, all right, we are finally going into a full rebuild, right? Because they tried. And They went out and they traded and got, Kyrie, and then they picked up KD and James Harden. That didn't work. Then they picked up Ben Simmons. That didn't work. And then they got Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, thought they were going to build a young squad around them. That didn't work. The Nets have nowhere to go, right? The Nets are pretty much just a bad organization and a bad team. And for example, the Nets are still paying Ben Simmons. Next year, they owe him $40.3 million to be on that roster. I mean, it does not get much worse than that. The question, though, is can Mikal Bridges be the guy? And I think that's a very fair question, and I'm a big Bridges fan, but we saw last year in Brooklyn, even though he didn't have a good supporting cast, he took a dip, man. He took a step back. When he was traded last season to the Brooklyn Nets midway through in the KD trade, he only played 27 games with Brooklyn, but this was really his first chance at being the guy on the team, the one that everybody's turning heads looking at when it's crunch time. And he averaged 26 points per game. Like, he looked like he was becoming that guy. And this past season, he dipped back down under 20. He shot around the same from three, 37%. And the rest of his numbers were pretty much the same other than his field goal percentage, which dipped from 47.5 down to 43.6. Now, I do believe with better teammates, he's going to look a lot better. For example, look at the Nets this past year. Cam Thomas had 22.5 leading the team, and he's a very streaky player. And then you had Mikal Bridges. Dennis Schroeder was number 3. I know Cam Johnson didn't play the whole year, but man, talk about a down year. Spencer Dinwiddie was there half the season. Claxton was all right, and, who knows what his long-term future is like in Brooklyn. And then Lonnie Walker. Like, they just didn't have a good roster for Mikal Bridges to compete with. And I just think that speaks to the lackluster ownership of the Brooklyn Nets. But here's my thing as it pertains to Philadelphia. If they want to go out and they want to trade for Mikal Bridges, he doesn't have to be the guy here in Philadelphia. He can kind of almost slide back to how he was in Phoenix and being one of the top options, but not being the guy, right? He can play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Mikal Bridges is an incredible 3-and-D wing. Matter of fact, when the Sixers drafted him, we said, okay, this team needs a 3-and-D wing, and they finally got what they needed. And then they traded him away on draft night, and I don't want to go back and revisit that because, like I said, the pain is still there. But Bridges is a really good player. And I don't know if he's a 1A type of guy. Maybe he could be a 1B, or maybe he's just a third option. Whatever it is, it coincides with the goals of this team and Maxey and Embiid. And there are games where Bridges can take over. There are games where he's probably going to be a little bit inefficient if you're asking him to constantly be that guy. But we know he can shoot. We know he can defend. And overall, just a great personality. His mom, I don't know if she still works for the Sixers or not. She's probably pissed off at this point. But let's be honest. Bridges does not want to be in Brooklyn, most likely. Maybe he wants to go join forces with the Knicks and his boys there. Or maybe he comes back home to Philadelphia and tries to take them out. Either way, I'm sure the Sixers will be in those trade conversations if they start to appear with Brooklyn. Now, another thing is I don't think Sean Marks would want to do business with Daryl Morey again after the whole Ben Simmons trade and how that went down. But when it comes down to it, man, the Nets have big decisions to make, and sometimes you have to do business with teams you don't want to just to get the return that you can. So obviously the Sixers would have to beat a lot of offers, and they would have to throw in some draft picks more than other teams, most likely. But a proposed trade was put up on Bleacher Report, and here are the details of it. Bleacher Report says that the Sixers would get Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith in a trade, and in return, the Nets would get the number 16 pick this year, the 2026 first rounder, the least favorable of OKC, Houston, and the Clippers, 2030 first rounder, and then seconds in 27 and 28. Sixer Nation, what do you think about this trade? I personally don't think the Nets would do this unless you get maybe another pick involved in here. But Dorian Finney-Smith would be a great 3-and-D wing for the Sixers. We know what Mikal Bridges would do, and bringing him home almost just feels right in a way. Like, it just feels like correcting history and what should have happened. But I still think the Sixers would probably have to give up a little bit more in this deal. But if this is what it took to get Bridges and Smith, I honestly don't know if I'd be opposed to it. Like, obviously, there's a lot of options, a lot of things that the Sixers will go through this offseason, but these guys are exactly what the Sixers need to look for this offseason. Like, they're just the perfect fits. You have to find those perfect fitting puzzle pieces around Maxey and Embiid And I think just given the length and the shooting of these guys, it would immediately help this squad. Now, again, they're going to need more, but this would make a huge, huge jump as it pertains to Philadelphia. But again, we have to see what the Brooklyn Nets decide to do. Will they decide to move on from Mikal Bridges, maybe even Cam Johnson, just a year after trading for them? The Nets are distraught. They're in a huge mess. And please, I do not want to hear Ben Simmons should be involved in the deal too. There have been a couple people saying the Sixers should also try to get Ben Simmons back as a backup big. No thank you. No can do. So we'll see how it plays out, man. But what do you think the Sixers should do if Mikal Bridges becomes available? Should they inquire and try to bring him home and pair him with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid? Would that be the big three right there that could get this team over the hump? Give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. As always, appreciate everybody tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That being said, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.